Believers, let's say you go to a bank because you want to put some money in the deposit. And you arrive at the bank, and the one at the door tells you, you can go to that office over there, office number 5. So you walk to office number 5, and what do you see? You see a woman with a blindfold on. Good afternoon, sir. Or if you're a woman, good afternoon, ma'am. She says, and you think, what? You're shocked, thinking, good afternoon. The woman tells you, sit down. How can she know you're sitting down when she's blindfolded? So you sit down, you hand over your cash, and she puts the cash into a machine and closes the machine. And she tells you, we're going to handle it from here on. You can wait downstairs. So now you begin to protest because you say, ma'am, why don't you take that blindfold off? This is a serious matter. This is money I'm putting on my bank deposit. You need to be able to see that it's me that entered this room to put money in this deposit. What if it's some creep or some other criminal that comes in my name to deposit money? You don't even see who he is. And then the woman tells you, if you don't comply, sir, we'll call the security on you. You'll be escorted out of the building. What do? You leave that place and tell everyone you know don't go to that bank because they put blindfolded bank employees there to help you. And if you would tell anyone else there that you go to a bank and they have blindfolded employees, people would say, what? Everyone would think, even small children would think, no, this ain't right. Even crazy people who are out of mind would think, what? Blindfolded people? Working with finances? Who's going to buy that? Now, if you have a bank that works that way and you comply with them, if later you find out they've been scamming you or robbing you, people will not agree with what the bank did to you, but somewhere people are going to blame you. You know why? Because people are going to say, hold on a minute. Let's say your name is Kevin. Hold on a minute, Kevin. If you arrive at the bank and you see something so disturbing, they blindfold all the employees that have to work with the money directly. The moment you saw that, you should have walked out of the building. Because there's nothing right about the situation. Why did you trust them after seeing this big red flag that was way too obvious? Or let's say you enter a taxi. If you enter in a taxi and the driver has a blindfold on and asks you where you want to go, would you still remain in the taxi and trust close the door, put the seatbelt on, and allow the driver to drive you somewhere? No, because he's blindfolded. If you're in a taxi, if you enter a taxi and the guy has a blindfold on, leave the taxi. If you stay in the taxi and begins to drive, yes, he's wrong, but you're the one that enabled the wrong eventually because you saw clearly this individual is out of his mind or out of her mind, driving a car with a blindfold on. Now, when you go to courthouses in the Western world, what do you often see? A statue of this Greek goddess. And this Greek goddess has a blindfold on. She has scales in one hand and a sword in another. So she's an armed woman with a blindfold. And she has scales in her hand. Hold on a minute. If you have a scale, you need to be able to see what's being measured. So she has no clue what's being measured. And she has a weapon to cause harm. So if whatever is measured is not correct, someone is harmed because she carries a sword. But how can she know whether something is correct or not? She doesn't. Just remember the examples I gave on to you about the bank employees with blindfolds on or a taxi driver with a blindfold on. You automatically would walk away. Instinctively, even your body would push you to get out of there. Yet, when it comes to daily life, we entrust ourselves and our affairs to courthouses that worship a blindfolded, armed female vampire who's ready to strike. And when you enter that courthouse, you need to talk a certain way. You need to sit a certain way. When a judge enters in, you need to rise. You need to give homage to the judge. So you need to give all this worship you need to give to that Greek goddess who's blindfolded, armed, and she also expects to be able to measure things without seeing it. I'm sorry, but the moment you see that statue of that Greek goddess over there, that should warn you, hold on a minute. I'm in the United States of America, or maybe you are in Colombia. You would say this is SS la República de Colombia. ¿Por qué tiene esta Dios aquí? You mean if you're speaking Spanish, you would ask yourself like things like that. You begin to think, hold on a minute. Why do we have a statue of a Greek goddess and this is not Greece? If it's Greece and we have a statue of a Greek goddess, it's part of their national history. Or if it's Italy or Macedonia or Greece, you would think, okay, Greek Empire, Roman Empire, okay, I can understand that, but hold on a minute. Even if you're in Greece and you go to a courthouse and you see this Greek goddess that's blindfolded with and armed and with an economic measure in her hands, you would think, what? Hold on a minute. A scale was used for economic measurements, for measuring prices. It's an economic thing. So what does that has to do with justice? And that sword has to do with violence. Isn't justice about having long-term solutions for everyone? Why does she carry a sword? And why is she blindfolded? Even if she wasn't blindfolded, the fact that she has an economic measurement and the sword shows you that it's all about economics, so it's not about justice. Long story short, that whole statue of the Greek goddess is an abomination and it's a big red flag. That shows you right on that whatever involved in is devil worship. It can be that your daughter was raped and killed by some creep, and you think they're going to bring you justice, and you see the statue over there. You see the statue tell you there's no justice over here. First of all, your daughter is dead. They can't resurrect your daughter and give your daughter back her life. So that cannot be done. So whatever harm they inflict on the perpetrator is not going to resolve the situation. So they cannot give you justice. They can't. Okay? Yet they claim to bring justice, and they put this abomination up there. And that abomination should tell you, I cannot trust these people. It can be that you have a landlord that's robbing you. And you think I have evidence, I can go to the courthouse. And you see, the fact that you see this Greek female vampire with an economic skills in her hand shows you that it's all about economics, all about balance in the community. It's not about justice, all about making sure people get along. Along with what? With the Greek goddess. So, that means that if your case does not contribute to people getting along in the devil worship, you're being attacked. That's what the sword of Lady Justice stands for. So, anyone who puts their trust in courthouses after witnessing that abomination, I'm not saying that they are responsible for the scamming, all that's going on. No, they're not guilty about it, but somewhere your intuition has shown you already something's off. Look, if you go, let me say, if you go to a doctor, for example, let's say your husband has pain and needs to go to emergency, and you arrive there, and the first one you see is dressed like a clown, all those colors, and with very red lipstick, and they're speaking in very feminine tones. Would you trust the life of your husband and his health to that hospital when you have a manager that walks around like that? No. That's a red flag. Or if you are involved with a company and when you read the letters, you don't even spell the words correctly, would you consider that, would you still trust them? No. When it comes to communication, we tend to pay attention to such stuff. Whether someone uses the right spelling or not. Even if it's just a tiny spelling error, people still say it's an error. Sometimes it's not an error. If you have a British company emailing to an American company, they spell certain words differently. But the American company may feel offended because they don't spell things the American way, and they may discard communication with that company. Such things happen. So when it comes to superficial things that we've made up, like spelling rules, we pay a lot of attention. And often it's rightfully so. Because criminals tend to counterfeit stuff a lot. So why is it that when it comes to things like spelling rules, or when it comes to whether you use someone's first and last name, we are so attentive? Because it has to do with Why? Because that's to do with our validation. When it comes to really examining stuff, we don't care. Till this day, nobody, and I'm talking about people that studied law, professors in law, none of them could justify why you have this Greek goddess that symbolizes the justice or the legal system or the justice system. Nobody could justify it. Yet, all of them work in that field. Why do you work in a field that is symbolized or personified in an abomination that you cannot justify and that you cannot explain? Why would you continue to work there? Look, if you go to a French restaurant, but you see Chinese people all the time speak Chinese to one another, you're going to think, what? I thought it's a French restaurant. We still order food over there? Well, if it's a French owner and he has French Chinese employees, it will be different. But if you go to a French restaurant, but you only see Chinese people over there, you only see Chinese dishes, you would think, what? This is a fraud, this is a scam. Why is it then that people see that Greek abomination and people just don't pay attention to it? It's because they don't want to pay attention to it. Because the moment they begin to ask, Your Honor, why do we have a Greek goddess on top of here? Or the moment they ask politicians, why do we have those Greek statues symbolizing our political order? The moment they begin to ask questions, they need to be willing to deal with the answers. And once they get the answers, they need to reflect on themselves. So once they realize it's devil worship, then they need to choose a side. Do I get along with the devil worship? Or will I seek the Lord? And seeking the Lord implies self-reflection and giving up all forms of escapism. That means facing yourself. But that's where people don't want to go. So they prefer to ignore the obvious red flags and the disturbing facts that are so obvious so that they don't have to self-reflect. They do this collectively as a society. Society as a whole, they ignore obvious red flags. And demons know this about the human species. Those Apollonians, those wizards know that also. That's why they're so confident in putting their abominations everywhere, because they know that the majority of people are going to ignore it because they want to be left alone. So the majority of people will enable harm and evil in their communities as long as they are relieved, as long as it doesn't happen to them personally, or it doesn't affect them directly, they will tolerate it. That's a selfish attitude that's common in the human species. Not every human being has that attitude, and there are some groups that are different, but in general, that's how people operate, because that's the state of fallen mankind. They do not want answers. They do not want solutions. They just want relief, and they don't care at whose expense it is as long as they are relieved. And there are people that are going to approach you with that same attitude. I don't care if they come in the name of Christ or not. There are people who are only interested in being relieved, and they will see you as an asset to relieve them, and that's the only way they relate to you, as an asset, as a tool to relieve themselves. The moment they can't relieve themselves by using you anymore, you don't exist. So, just as you would not ignore red flags when it comes to individual people with disturbing attitudes, don't ignore society's red flags either. So put your trust in Christ. If you have to deal with a pagan courthouse and you're pushed to deal with it, then you deal with it in a practical way as a tool. But I rather don't have to deal with it at all. Put your trust in Christ alone. I'm saying like this: when it comes to daily life and when it comes to conflict and solutions, trust Christ 100%. Don't rely on your own understanding, don't rely on other people, and don't rely on past experiences. Trust Christ. Be at peace.